spiritual experience can't be contained in a one-sided sort of way. In a way, it's not complete unless it's communicated. So in a way, this is part of also these mitra ceremonies, because you're here because you've been inspired by the Buddhist teaching and you can't contain it. I hope that's kind of what you're feeling. You're feeling like you can't contain it. It can't just stay within your personal bedroom, even in a lockdown. It has to come out. It has to be communicated. It has to be shared in a community. So welcome to Dharma Day, and particularly the 3 new mitras. So as Virya Naga said, today we celebrate the Dharma, and Dharma has it's one of these words in Sanskrit and Pali that has a number of layers of meaning. Some of it's about the truth itself, so for this evening's purposes it's the truth itself and the way leading to a realisation of that truth. So, and that's what we celebrate today. We celebrate that in Dharma Day, so it's a very, very joyful occasion for all of us. And what we're celebrating at that time is the story particularly of the Buddha. So the Buddha had spent many, many years searching for the truth and the way things are. He tried all sorts of methods, and all sorts of methods really hadn't worked. He tried the ascetic starving himself method, and he said it was like his ribs were like the rafters of a roof, and he could, if he pressed his belly, he could touch his backbone. And he did that, so no one here has to do that. That's great, that's not what we're celebrating. So he did that, and then thankfully found out that it didn't work. He abandoned his ascetic practices and did this amazing, very deep, esoteric meditation that you may have done before, called the Mindfulness of Breathing. So, you know, sometimes people think there's this beginner's meditation, which is you just kind of are mindful of the breath, and that's a very basic meditation, but actually that's supposedly what the Buddha was doing when he gained enlightenment. So he was sitting under a tree, very famously, he was sitting under the Bodhi tree. He was doing the mindfulness of breathing. He had this awakening into the way things are. He saw it. His mind stilled. It was a happy, concentrated mind, and he glimpsed the way things are. Now, it wasn't just like a light bulb kind of appearing at the top of his head and he thought, oh, I've got it. They say he sat there for about 7 weeks, actually, just absorbing this experience, just allowing it to kind of radiate into every aspect of his being. So we celebrate his enlightenment in May, the full moon of May, and then we celebrate him teaching the Dharma in July. So that gives us the full moon of July. So that gives us a sense of how long he sat there just absorbing this experience emotionally, cognitively, understanding the implications. And what's really interesting about this is that it was a profound spiritual experience beyond words and concepts. But then he realised that he had to spread it, he had to teach it. And this gives us a very important principle, and the principle is that enlightenment cannot be contained in a one-sided way. Spiritual experience can't be contained in a one-sided sort of way. In a way, it's not complete unless it's communicated. So in a way, this is part of also these mitra ceremonies, because you're here because you've been inspired by the Buddhist teaching and you can't contain it. I hope that's kind of what you're feeling. You're feeling like you can't contain it. It can't just stay within your personal bedroom, even in a lockdown. It has to come out. It has to be communicated. It has to be shared in a community, and it has to be shared in communication with other people. And that's why you publicly become a mitra. It's not just that you think, yes, Buddhism is a really good idea, and I'm going to meditate in the privacy of my own bedroom, and you know, keep these really ideas. Important ideas to myself, which is, you know, the English way of not talking about religion or anything that could be meaningful in public. You've kind of embraced a kind of larger path of making this public this evening, which is probably somewhat nerve-wracking. But it does show this principle that it can't be contained in this one-sided way. So the Buddha was there absorbing this experience. And then he realised that he had to communicate it. It was kind of pouring out of him, one could think. And he thought to himself, well, how can I do that because no one's going to understand. You know, it's an experience beyond words and concepts. So how do I communicate an experience beyond words and concepts? And then he did something really, really radical, which a great Buddhist teacher of India, Dr. Ambedkar, made the point. This is very unusual for a kind of guru, a spiritual guru, particularly of India at that time, which is that he got up and walked. So usually in India at that time, and you could say still in certain contexts, if you're a great spiritual teacher, you wait for disciples to come to you. You sit there and just wait for your reputation to become widely available. The Buddha didn't do that. He thought, who could I communicate this profound spiritual understanding that I've had? And he thought of his friends. He thought of his old companions in the spiritual life who'd been doing these ascetic practices with him. And I think that's quite significant, that he didn't just think, well, I'll just talk to people. He thought of his friends. And maybe he felt grateful to them that they'd shared his spiritual journey with him so far. And these were the people that might understand. So he got up and he walked in this time of year, so it's July, which in India is the rainy season. It's the quite hot and you get these huge downpours of rain. And he walked quite a long way. He walked from Bodh Gaya to Sarnath, which I've done in a car. And also, unusually for India, it has a dual carriageway. They don't always drive on the right side of the dual carriageway. They sometimes, if the other side is emptier, they just go across and drive in the oncoming traffic. So even with that, that's 4 hours. So that gives you a sense of how far it is. So the Buddha got up and walked, and he had this really beautiful vision, actually, which we'll hear in the puja this evening. He thought to himself, he had this reticence to teach. How will people understand it? You know, it's an experience beyond words and concepts. And then he imagined all beings. He sort of, actually more than he imagined, he had a vision of all beings like lotuses emerging from a lake. All beings kind of emerging from the mud of existence. From their difficulties and suffering, from their confusion, and stretching up like lotuses towards the light so that they'd be free of the mud. And he said, you know, there's all kinds of lotuses, red and white and blue, and they're all beings are reaching up to the light, which is a very, very positive image, actually. And no matter where you are in your spiritual journey, all beings have this kind of impulse to transcend, to grow and develop, to reach towards the light. And he thought to himself, there are some but with but little dust in their eyes who would be lost if I don't communicate the Dharma. So that's what he did. He walked to his old friends, and he had to formulate this non-conceptual truth. So there's this kind of process where you have a non-conceptual understanding, an awakening experience, an insight experience, where reality unfolds before you. And then you've got to reflect on it and formulate it into words, which are then communicated. People understand those words, they reflect on those words, and then they have the same experience. So there's this process which we call becoming. You have an experience, you communicate that experience, but you formulate that, you reflect on that experience and you communicate that experience, and other people listen to that experience, they reflect on that experience, and then they realise the truth from it themselves. So that's the whole Buddhist path, you know, throughout the ages. It's an awakening, an insight experience that's then communicated, reflected upon and communicated. We listen to it, we reflect on it, we have the same experience. Listening, reflecting and meditating. And that's the whole Buddhist kind of, in a way, the whole structure of the spiritual life in Buddhism. So this all happened a long time ago. It happened 2,500 years ago, but of course it's of relevance to us, because that process of listening, reflecting, meditating, reflecting, communicating, has gone on and on and on, as Virinaga said, right now down to us, which is incredible. We're incredibly lucky that that's happened. And what we do at Dharma Days, we kind of step outside of the Dharma that's been communicated to us, and we reflect on it, and we reflect on ourselves. What difference has it made to me? Because of course it's not just enough to read a Buddhist book in order to reflect and become that experience for ourselves. I studied Buddhist philosophy at university, and unfortunately it didn't make me enlightened. Well, maybe it did. Unfortunately not. No, you could do a degree in Buddhist philosophy and not necessarily be enlightened as your kind of graduation first. So, yeah, so what we do is we have to kind of step outside what we've been given, and what really makes you practice Buddhism is an emotional response to that, is the emotional response to the Dharma. So on Dharma Day, what we do is we step outside what's been communicated to us and have a kind of look at it and reflect on our emotional response to that teaching. What this is called is a practice called Kritanyata, or gratitude. And what gratitude literally means is knowledge of benefits received. It's an understanding. So you can't make someone feel grateful. It's a bit like being told, you know, you should be grateful for your Auntie May's, I don't know, she gave you a T-shirt, you hate the T-shirt. You know, it's really old-fashioned, you're giving it for Christmas, and then you're told to be grateful. And there's usually some starving children somewhere that you should be comparing yourself to and feel very, very grateful in a kind of response to that. And of course that really doesn't lead to the experience of gratitude, it leads to the experience of feeling slightly guilty, which might just be my family. So what we do in the practice of Kritanyata is you actually just reflect on the benefits that you've received. You reflect on the qualities of the Dharma. You reflect on, in a way, on rejoicing in merits. You know, what have I received? What effect did it have on me when I first encountered the Buddhist teachings? And what effect do they continue to have on me as I put them into practice? And that's what really galvanises our Buddhist practice, because we'll only do what we love. I remember a friend of mine, and she was really, really struggling to meditate, to get up in the morning to meditate. And then she fell in love with someone in America, and suddenly was able to get up and have Skype calls at 5 o'clock in the morning every day. And so, yeah, you know, that teaches us, it's a bit what we love, that we become, you know, that what we love, that we dwell on, that we reflect on, and that's what we put into practice. So we need to kind of, in a way, step outside of Buddhist practice, have a look at Buddhist practice and the Dharma, the teachings that we've been given, and reflect on their qualities, reflect on what we call in Buddhism rejoice in their merits, in order to connect with them emotionally, and that allows us to put them into practice. The traditional way of putting it is that if you reflect on the benefits that you've received about something, then you'll be happy. And when you're happy, you'll be concentrated. And when you're concentrated, your mind is receptive to wisdom. So it's also a path of insight, and we can do this with anything. I know that some people have been doing gratitude diaries and things like that. But it's not just a little practice, gratitude. It's a real practice. So I just wanted to talk through a few reflections, and I don't want to impose these reflections on you. I think we're going to have a reflective exercise in a minute, where we'll reflect on these things for ourselves. But I wanted to go through the kind of traditional qualities of the Dharma that are found in a text called the Triratna Buddhist, which some of you I know have chanted. It's a Pali text. It's quite good to learn because it also unites you with Buddhists all over the world. So if you do end up going on pilgrimage, for example, to Bodh Gaya, you'll hear lots of Buddhists from different countries chanting this chant in Pali. And what it is rejoicing in the Buddha, rejoicing in the Buddhist teachings, and rejoicing in the Buddhist community. And there's certain sort of set epithets, if you like, or set qualities of the Dharma that it goes through. So, yeah, but you don't have to do it like that. You could just sit there and think, well, what do I appreciate about the Dharma? What do I appreciate about the Buddha's teaching? You know, what benefits have I received from the Buddha's teaching? From that process of the Buddha, you know, walking from Bodhgaya to Sarnath and finding words to communicate the inexpressible. So the first thing that we traditionally say is that, well, the Buddhist teaching is well communicated. It appeals to our imagination. So there's lots of, the Buddhist tradition is 2,500 years old. It's very multifaceted, and it's got a lot of different ways in to communicate itself to the whole being. So when the Buddha communicated in words, he didn't just try one method, he tried many methods. So in the Buddhist tradition, in the Buddhist teachings, we have a lot of stories. I know that people really, really love stories. In fact, the earliest Buddhist texts that were written down were notes for storytellers, because the Buddhist tradition was communicated in stories. And some of them are really, really quite wacky. So there's lots of Buddhist stories. There's a story about the Buddha himself. There's a story about how he went forth, who he met on the way, his enlightenment, his walking all over India, teaching the Dharma. And you've also got Buddhist stories from, you know, right down through the ages and all sorts of different cultures. I know that Milarepa is a very popular story because it's really quite extreme, because his aunt killed his father to take over the inheritance, and to get revenge he started training with a black magician, and the black magician taught him how to destroy the whole village with a hailstorm. So there's this very, very involved story about someone who really, really done something really terrible. And what I really love in that story is that he has a change of heart when he's killed a whole village. He's destroyed all their crops, destroyed all the buildings. He kind of trapped them in a family wedding in this building, and then made the building collapse on their heads. He's done these terrible things. And then he gets caught in this relationship with this black magician. He keeps making him do more and more things. And eventually, he does something. He causes another hailstorm. And he goes to this site of his destruction. And he picks up a dead bird. And it's the dead bird that opens his heart and makes him realise that he can't go on this way. And he takes this dead bird and he leaves it at his teacher's feet, and he says, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And I find those kind of stories really powerful because they're so human. You know, what was it that changed Milarepa's mind? It was this dead bird. Of all the things he'd done, it was this tiny little defenceless creature which made him renounce all forms of violence. So he then goes and finds a Buddhist teacher who and that's a whole story in itself, who trains him by making him build towers and knocking them down. You know, so there's all these teachings, really quite extraordinary teachings, and stories that are found. The teachings are found within these extraordinary stories. The Buddha's disciples. Kissa Gautam, finding a mustard seed in a house where no one had died, to heal her dead baby, and all these kind of stories that they're very, very profound. They teach us a deep truth about the way things are, and they're very human at the same time. They're human lives that we can imagine. So you've got stories, you've also got poetry. So originally the Buddhist teaching was communicated in poetry that people would learn by heart and then talk about, discuss the meaning of it. And they used images from nature. They used images of the sea, and the depths of the sea, and what it would be like to be in the depths of the sea. And they used images of moonlight, the still, calm, stainless, moon-like quality, where the shackles of constant becomings are cut and thrown away. All these verses, very, very beautiful, that really, really touch the heart. And then you've got doctrine, so you've got really quite philosophical, in-depth analysis of the mind and mental states. So all of these are available to us, and some people really love the philosophical part, some people love the stories, some people love the poetry. But there's something that will involve our whole being. So the Buddhist teachings are well communicated. Even Sanditiko, Svagata, which means it means they're happily communicated as well as being well communicated, happily communicated, profound and yet deeply felt by us. And the second thing is that we can see the results immediately. So we put the Buddhist teachings into practice and it has an immediate effect. And some of you might have experienced this, you know, when you come to a class, first of all, and you even do a body scan. Like even doing a body scan, just at 10 minutes of body awareness, even what Amma Pushpa led us through very beautifully this evening, just puts you in a different mental state. It's not, you know, you feel different at the end. You can see that the practices work quite immediately. If you can't see that they work, well, you wouldn't keep coming. But there's something in them that you can immediately taste. You're not waiting for a future time when these teachings are going to come into effect. They're visible here and now, in this moment. And I remember this from myself, because I went to the South London Buddhist Centre with Amma Pushpa quite a number of years ago, and I remember I was living at home at the time, and I came back from my first Buddhist class, and my mum said it was like a different person walked into the door after I came home. She said, you just believed in life again. And I haven't sort of substantially changed from that, in that sense of I still have that first feeling of like, I remember sitting there thinking, this is it. Like, this is so extraordinary. And just feeling like my whole world opened up. And that was just doing the Metta Bhavana, learning the Metta Bhavana. So yes, we can see the results immediately, Sandittika. And also another quality is that they're timeless. The Buddhist teachings are timeless. They apply in all times and in all conditions. They're not confined to a particular time or a particular place. And they're as relevant now as they ever were. I was just thinking I'm quite hot. Can we put the air conditioning back on? Thank you, sir.
I'll put mine on, shall I? See that?
It's too hot. Yeah.
Do you want to put that on?
Yeah. Let's have it all on. It's either because I'm hot because I'm giving a talk, or it's just really hot. It's really hot. Or I'm having a hot flush or something.
Or inside experience.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what's happening. I'm having a great
Purification.
I lost that. So yes, so the Buddhist teachings are timeless, akalika. They're as relevant now as they ever were, and they're as relevant in all places as they are now. And some of you know I have quite a bit of contact with our Buddhist community in India, and I remember this. I really love this woman particularly. She came from a community in Gujarat who'd suffered some quite extreme violence, and they'd all decided to, this community had all decided to convert to Buddhism because they were going to, in response to the violence committed to their community, they were going to have a different response. They were going to have a response of peace. And there was this woman, and she was giving these talks, you know, about we will not succumb to violence, we won't be bullied, we won't react. We're going to practice the Buddhist path. We're going to follow the path of peace. We're going to follow the path of mental transformation. And I was listening to her, and I was just feeling the same feelings about the Dharma that she does. But we're from a completely radical situation. And I was sitting there with some young women from Gujarat who were part of this conversion ceremony. And they were all wearing their Gujarati traditional clothes with embroidery and mirrors. And we were all sitting there completely delighted, you know, it was being translated so we could both understand. And I sat next to this woman and I thought, well, we're worlds away from each other. I can't imagine what your life is really growing up in Gujarat. You probably can't imagine what my life is like growing up in South London. But we know each other. We know in a funny kind of way what's most deeply important to both of us. And we understand that. And it works for both of us. The Buddha's teaching works for both of us. That's a timeless principle that works whether you're growing up in South London or in a remote community in Gujarat suffering violence towards your community. And that gives me a lot of hope, actually. You know, that in a way the Buddhist teaching relates to human experience at its very root. If it didn't, I don't think I'd really follow it. And what I was noticing recently is I was moving my bedroom and I moved all my books up. I realised I've got more poetry books than I do Buddhist teaching books, Dharma books. So I don't know if that's the nature of confession, but basically I've got more poetry books than I do Dharma books. And I was thinking, well, in a way that's interesting, because for me they're the same thing. They both relate to the depths of human experience. And if I can't find the Dharma, the Buddhist teaching in poetry, and I can't find poetry in the Buddhist teaching, then what's that about? You know, it can't be separate from the depths of human experience. It has to speak to that experience. So it's timeless, and it's also of a nature of personal invitation. Ehipasika, which means come and see for yourself. No one is going to force you to believe. No one is going to force you to practice the Dharma. It's an invitation and not a demand. So you'll be glad to know that these three women here this evening have not been. Have you been coerced? We've been shackled. Speak about that. You know, it's got to be of a personal invitation. No one is forced to become a mitra. No one is forced to practice. So there's no kind of implication that anyone's going to save you. It's a path of radical responsibility, but it's an invitation as well. I had this wonderful dream, again in India, where I was at our retreat centre in Paja, which is it's in the kind of semi-jungle, and there's some Buddhist caves, ancient Buddhist caves, and there was an ordination happening, but it was a men's ordination retreat, and so I wasn't invited, so I was hiding in the jungle, like peering out, because my friend was becoming ordained, and I was peering out through these leaves, and Chandrashil, who's one of the public preceptors in India, was performing the ordination, but he saw me at the corner of his eye, and he's quite smiley anyway. He's quite, he's kind of, I can imagine him doing this. And then he looked at me, and then behind his head was this beautiful emerald path leading into the jungle, and he just went like that. And I thought, well, that's Buddhist practice. It's not, no one's going to force you to go down that path. But it's opened up, and there's a vision of something quite extraordinary, a little bit frightening. There are tigers and leopards in our retreat centres in India. But yeah, just a little invitation on its way. And it was this beautiful path, emerald path, going into the jungle. There's a line by Sangha where he says, the forest whispers come. And the next quality is that it's progressive, it leads onwards. There's a path, a very, very clear path. Ethics, meditation, and wisdom. And I remember seeing Sangha once and saying, oh, you know, I was worried that my Dharma teaching was a bit boring, basically. And that I should have something a bit more esoteric there. So I went in this whole involved drama to Sangha, and he founded our order and movement, and he listened very patiently, and in the end he said, Vajratara, the Buddha taught ethics, meditation and wisdom, and he taught it again, and he taught it again, and he taught it again, and that's all you have to do, that's all you have to communicate. So it's great. I always find this really exciting because for me I was told, you know, be more loving, be more positive, but I had no means of how to do that. But Buddhism is a very practical path. This is what you do to be more loving. You do the metta bhavana, meditation practice. This is what you do to be more mindful. You do the mindfulness of breathing. You study the Buddhist texts. You internalise that wisdom. You reflect. You go on retreat. You put in the conditions, and the spiritual life is guaranteed. And you don't have to do that by an oppressive force of will, kind of grinding. What Sangha actually says, you achieve the path not in achieving with grim determination goals fixed for itself by conscious mind, without reference to the total psyche, but in the harmonious unfoldment in and through mindfulness of one's deepest potentialities. So you're not, the path isn't about a kind of grim determination. You're not kind of trying to climb a mountain in this kind of heat. It's more of an unfolding of one's whole being. And it's an unfolding of even our own wisdom. So the last quality is that the Buddhist teachings are to be understood ourselves, individually by the wise. So what it's saying is it takes your own wisdom, you might have found this, it takes your own wisdom, but it expands it. And it's a bit like, I remember this feeling of reading particularly the Three Jewels, which is an introductory Dharma book. And I remember thinking, this is everything that I've thought of any depth. And then I turn the page, and then it would go a little bit further. And that was, I sometimes talk about this experience of being on the number 37 bus on Efford Road on my way to school, and standing up on the bus and saying, this is it, to my little school friends Ingrid. This is it, Ingrid, this is it. She just told me to sit down, but it's sort of embarrassing. But yes, that was the feeling. It's like, this is everything that I've been sitting and thinking about in the privacy of my own mind. It's my own wisdom, and it goes much further. But it's drawing on your own wisdom. It's not trying to impose something, another system. It's sort of beyond us and yet ourselves, to quote a poet, Wallace Stevens. It's beyond us, and yet we know it deeply, and yet there is something that responds in our own hearts of our own wisdom, and it builds on that. If it doesn't, you can't really go for refuge to it. You can't really have that emotional response to it. If it doesn't have contain your own wisdom, then in a way it's something other, and you won't love it in that way. So what we need to do with the Dharma and on Dharma Day is that we reflect on the effect of the Dharma in our life. We reflect on what we've received. We reflect on the qualities of the Buddhist teaching. And then we'll be happy. And when we're happy, we're concentrated. And when we're concentrated, we'll understand the teachings from their own side. So we listen to the teachings, we reflect on the teachings, and then we become the teachings. So I'll just finish with a little quote. I don't really know why I just wanted to put it in. Because there's a really lovely story about Sabir the Wanderer, who's taught a set of questions to ask any religious teacher. And if the religious teacher can answer these questions, which is basically all about who's wise, what is a Buddha, what is a great person, what is a person with insight. He goes around, he finds all these different teachers, and eventually he thinks, well, there's one left. There's one left I haven't been to, but he's a young man, and I can't really believe that a young man will be able to teach me anything. He thinks, well, he was just about to give up the spiritual life, go back to his life of pleasure because no one could answer his questions, but he thought, I'll just try this young lad. So he goes off to see the Buddha, who's recently become enlightened, and the Buddha answers all his questions. He's not flapped, he's not angry, he's not defensive, he just answers them one by one. And Sabir is so excited, he does these beautiful verses of praise. So I'll just read you the end ones. He says, you've cleared up all my doubts with the eye of your perfect vision. So this is wisdom, this is full enlightenment, this is what it's like to have nothing in your way. All worries have gone, disturbances cut out, and instead you have all that is calm, controlled, firm and precise. When you speak, the gods celebrate, and when they hear you, they rejoice. You're a hero amongst heroes, and a power amongst the strong. It is amazing, Venerable Gautama. It is wonderful, Venerable Gautama. Just as if one might raise what has been overturned, or reveal what has been hidden, or point out the way to those who are lost, or hold out a lamp in the dark so that those who have eyes may see. So likewise has the truth been explained by Venerable Gautama in many ways. Therefore I take refuge in the Buddha, his Dharma and his Sangha. I wish to enter the homeless life and to receive the higher ordination near the Venerable Gautama. So hopefully you three have got some of that spirit. You're ready to go for refuge to the Buddha and the Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist community with that feeling of joy and uplift and amazement and wonder. And if I have any hope for all of you, it's just that that wonder will never ever cease.
Why am I becoming a mitra? So first of all, I just wanted to start by saying I've definitely been really lucky to have lots of really strong support networks in my life. So I've got a very supportive family who are here at the back, their first time in a Buddhist centre, and really brilliant friends. My best friend Hannah's here too, and yeah, I've always felt really lucky to have had that. Despite having those kind of really strong support networks, it feels like I've also spent a lot of time trying to look for something that's a bit bigger than me. And that was kind of the best words I could find to describe it. I was thinking it was maybe a mix of community and then also kind of purpose or meaning, but those don't feel good enough as words. And I essentially just bounced sort of between different church groups and different parts of the Labour Party, being are you the place? Is this going to help? And literally yo-yoed quite a few times. I met some really brilliant people, really, really lovely people. But it just it never really felt like it was quite right in those situations. It wasn't quite what I was looking for, even though I didn't really know that I was actually looking for something explicitly. And I definitely never considered Buddhism. It just wasn't on my radar at all. And then when I met Surya, he was the first Buddhist I'd ever met, and so I think he bore the brunt of a lot of questions. And yeah, it's sort of I think probably after quite a lot of questioning was oh, you do know that there's the Brixton community 5 minutes down the road from your flat. Maybe you could go along, as you seem quite interested. And so, yeah, I came down for the first time 2.5 years ago and was in Yoga Point in sort of January. And I was thinking on the way here now, oh, I'm so glad that we're not in Yoga Point today. Because it was even in January, I remember it was sweltering. And yeah, just heard, it's Padma Vajra had come down to give a talk, and I realised the other day that it's actually the first video that's on Brixton's YouTube. So I was I should rewatch that. Because yeah, when I was listening to it, one of the first things I was really struck by was the warmth of everyone who was there. So I really distinctly remember sitting on my cushions for the first time, hunched over this, and Sagarasila tapped me on the shoulder and was oh, have you ever meditated before? You might find that a little bit uncomfortable. Just when we get into meditating, maybe try sitting a bit like this. And as soon as we started, I was oh my goodness, thank God for this man. I'd have been in so much pain. And so I was really struck by the warmth of everybody and the friendliness. But then totally reeled in by the talk. And yeah, I think when I think of the Dharma, I think of it as something that really pulled me in. So it feels, yeah, very apt to becoming a mitra on Dharma Day. And yeah, has kind of totally caught my interest and made me really feel that feeling that Vajratara you were talking about of kind of the oh yes, this is the thing, this is communicating that thing that I sort of feel I sort of already knew but didn't know, and needed to be stretched to kind of understand it more, but it really, really rings true. And so yeah, we were studying in our study group the Triratna Buddhist the other week, and just everything it was saying about the Dharma, I was oh yes, like it really is, like it is the come and see Dharma. Like it is like really timeless in a way that feels really like outside of norms and like kind of any era's worldviews. And yeah, mainly I just am really, really excited by the Dharma, and definitely like feel really appreciative of how kind of mind stretching it is. And so yeah, I think if the Dharma is the thing that sort of has pulled me in, I really think that like it's connection that's kept me wanting to keep coming back. So like firstly that kind of sense of connection to something much bigger than me, and like I think some of you were definitely there, so I don't know if you'll remember it too, but in one of the retreats, I think it was the 5 Buddha Mandala retreat that you were running, Amrapushpa, in April, when we were doing the Metta Bhavana in the morning, Sudhika, just when we got to the final stage, like started dropping in the names of everyone who was on the Zoom call. And it was just like this huge, like, I don't know, it was like a big whoosh of like energy and kind of like connection. And it felt, yeah, like really, really, really magical, but also really grounded, and like really real. And like we were all kind of connecting into this big force that was really beyond us. And yeah, like really thinking of the other people. And at the time I was like, this is so weird, this is on Zoom, but it still feels possible to kind of feel that, like, yeah, that kind of big thing that's beyond you, that's connecting you together. And so kind of connection in that sense, but also, and definitely this is sort of like the main one that I think has meant that I've been coming every Monday, is kind of the connection with other people and the Sangha. And yeah, like while I like really, really admire and appreciate kind of the depth of the teaching in Triratna, I think for me the thing that makes Triratna feel like home is the Sangha and kind of the importance that's placed on kind of how you're relating to other people, and building those really strong friendships, and how that doesn't feel like a dusty old thing that you're told to do, but it feels really, really alive. And so, yeah, I just feel like really grateful and appreciative for all of the kind of support and the friendships of people in the Brixton Sangha. That's my 5 minutes. So like the brilliant women in our study group, who, yeah, have just been like an absolute anchor over the last year. And it's so exciting to meet Sara and Rachel in real life. It's really, really cool. And then like also kind of like all of the like friends in the Sangha who are always so kind of like there for you. And like Arianisha, when you were saying like that kind of really strange but kind of beautiful time that we had living together was, yeah, definitely my lockdown would have been a very, very different thing if I hadn't been living with you. And of course like Amrapushpa and like all of the different teachers and people who are involved in kind of making things like this happen. I think I've like glimpsed a fraction through like being in the media team of like what has to go into stuff like this and kind of the regular things that happen. And I just feel like, yeah, like even that fraction looks like a lot from the outside. So just really, really appreciative and admiring of that. And so, yeah, I just feel really lucky to get to be part of something that feels so special, and in my experience so far has felt really like genuinely transformative. Like it feels like there's a lot more freedom and a lot more space, a lot more connection with other people just in like day-to-day life. And I feel really ready to commit to this thing that feels like a real force for good. And I really love the symbolism of the incense and the kind of the idea of the Sangha kind of permeating everything it touches. And yeah, I want to help waft the incense. That's me.
Why am I here? Why am I a Buddhist? Or why do I want to be a mitra? It really is a thought-provoking question. And we had to write quite a lot about it, actually. Kept on asking me to write more and more and more. And I was, what it put me in touch with was my ambivalence, which I didn't expect. I thought I'd just, be, yes, I want to be here, this is wonderful and all that. But actually, I do feel ambivalent about it, although I feel committed at the same time. It's kind of weird, but I do. I suppose just to give you a little a little, what do you call it, a little piece of my life. There have been two main pillars in it that supported me through it, helped me making sense of it, shaping it, reshaping it, and reshaping how I perceive the world. And one's been psychoanalysis, and the other has been Buddhism. And the two have been side by side in my life for kind of like 30 years or so, or more, I think. So it's been a while. And there have been many psychoanalysts who've written about the overlap of Buddhism and psychoanalysis. And one of my heroes is Mark Epstein. And it is fascinating to think about this, where the interface is and where they connect. I'll say a little bit about that. I grew up, I think, with internally two main driving thoughts, and sometimes they were conscious within me and sometimes less so. And one was, there is something wrong with me and I don't know what it is. And the other was, there must be more to life than this, really, than this material. Before I retired from the NHS, I worked as a child psychotherapist, and I'm also a couple therapist and a parent-infant psychotherapist. So I now work as a perinatal couple therapist, working with couples and newborns, because I'm aware of just how much happens in the first few seconds, minutes, days of life, weeks of life, that shape our lives, where patterns of relating are formed, and they follow us throughout our life. And traumas that happen in the first maybe 6 months of your life or more are pre-verbal, so they don't have words, so they can remain hidden in the body and in the psyche. And I grew up, as I say, knowing that something was wrong and I didn't know what. One of the traumas that I did know about, that I was born breech and I got stuck with the umbilical cord around my neck. And so I was born not breathing and placed in a neonatal unit where I was resuscitated for a week. And that experience left me with a profound existential crisis, really. The womb that had nurtured me for almost 9 months was suddenly there trying to kill me, really. It sounds dramatic, but it was dramatic. And of course it wasn't intentional, but it happened. And, I suppose that's what I see as the dark side of the womb. It can be nurturing and caring, but like everything in life, there's also a dark side. So this and other traumas, less known to my conscious mind, which I think I carried in my body, really shaped me. And it was through analysis and meditation that, that has helped me, I suppose, get over these traumas or understand them and continue to shape and reshape. And I think that process of reshaping actually is still continuing. This sense of who I am. Oh, I don't like to say that in a Buddhist group, but yeah. So when as a young adult, I had many anxieties which came out through my dreams, and that led me to first of all, a Jungian psychoanalyst, and it's when I lived in Germany. And really? I thought, wow, okay. And then I came back and I went to a Kleinian analyst for 12 years, 4 times a week. It's not for the faint-hearted. And that's when I trained as a child psychotherapist. But also to fulfill my spiritual aspirations, I guess. I did a lot of yoga and Buddhism, and I attended classes and retreats. But sadly, at the beginning, I'm afraid I was put off by the leaders, without going into details, but it was in terms of their kind of, conduct towards others, sexual contact, and, with their students, that left me worried about their victims. And it wasn't that I was judging it from a moral point of view, but I found myself just full of anxieties about what was happening to the victims. And I realised that those thoughts were just not conducive for me to develop spiritually, so I had to leave. And I could liken it to the mother and baby interactions, when babies need really to be emotionally and physically, for their psychological growth, held by a mother who's not too intrusive and not too absent. So both have got to be there, in perfect balance. And of course that goes wrong, but there can be repair. But that's the principle of it, that there's this holding. And I think that principle does also apply to, in my experience, spiritual growth. So I suppose I'm saying that there was the dark side of the womb, but I also encountered the dark side of Buddhism. It didn't put me off, and I continued, and I don't know how I found Thich Nhat Hanh, but I ended up for a month, and I can't remember how I got there, on a retreat with his community in Plum Village, and I think that's when my real love, and passion for Buddhism really started to deepen, and he just embodied something that was beyond words, actually, his humility and his openness. And I really felt I'd arrived, and that's, as I say, where I think it all started for me. And and he did speak, although I'm told by Amara Pushpa that he was quoting the Buddha, but he did compare meditation to a finely tuned instrument where the tension was not too tight, not too loose. And that's how I feel that a mother, in ideal situation, holds the baby. And he also talked about, and this has helped me in my meditation, how to hold and cradle your own feelings when you meditate, like your anger or any feelings, really. Alongside this, my analysis continued, and I realised that as those early traumas were repaired, so my capacity to meditate really increased and deepened. And I began to understand my resistances or hindrances, as they're called, as being linked to my early traumas. And once some of that had been repaired, I really, really, really could meditate. I could really be with myself. And I think it's quite a known fact that the mother-infant relationship is a template for other relationships, but it's also a template. It was also a template for me of being with myself, being able to be really intimate with myself and there for myself. I am aware of the time. I will stop, but I just wanted to say something though about why I found Triratna. I belonged to a Zen Buddhist group for many, many years and did lots of silent retreats. But I kind of had to leave because of work, and I live just down the road from here, literally, so I came along here, and of course I met Amma. I'm terrible at names. Amma Pushpa, yeah? And she wrote me the most beautiful email, or it was short, but it was inviting me into this group, but it talked a lot about friendships. And it's that really made me feel I did want to be part of the group, and in order to develop and grow. And and so I came and I went on the summer retreat. I am going to stop. I honestly, okay. But I went on the summer retreat, and what I loved in my group was that, of course, I've heard, people talk about themselves and their feelings, but there were particularly young men who were mitras, who really could talk about themselves. And I'm really involved in mental health, as you gather, and in men's mental health, or men, so many men commit suicide in England, sadly. And so to hear them really talk, I thought was really quite inspired. So it was also then that got me here as well. I did want to be part of a group that could really be in touch with themselves and really talk and really be open and honest, really. And I want to, lastly, just thank my mitra group, because that's been wonderful. I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One of the really difficult things about going last is that you just want to talk, not just about what you guys have said, but what you said as well. Because ever since you spoke, I've had this Jimmy Cliff song going through my head, going, I can see clearly now. I can't get out of it. It's that real earworm now. So that's fantastic. And one of the things you said, Emma, and we talked about being in the Labour Party and joining some church groups, and I went and joined the Revolutionary Communist Party and became a Baha'i at one point. So, and of course, what you said, struck really close to home, because of course I've just become a grandmother. My lovely daughter around the corner, who would have been here tonight, but her baby cries all the time, and she had a very difficult birth, and so it's been really lovely getting close to you, and the recommendations that you've made about the reading and the Mark Epstein, and I've been really following that. So that was my preamble, but I'm actually just going to read this now, because I did the speech when I gave my daughter away when she got married, and I knew if I didn't read it out, I would just cry. And if I don't read this out, I will just cry, because there's such a community of love in this room. It's just wonderful. So I'm just going to read it. Okay. So it's lovely to be here with you all. I'm very excited and a bit nervous too. Not so much about speaking in public, but about making such a personal commitment in a public setting. I feel like I've got pre-wedding nerves. And in the run-up to this, a little voice in my head kept thinking of all the reasons why I couldn't become a mitra and I couldn't attend the ceremony. Maybe I could get pinged and have to self-isolate. So in this talk, I wanted to be honest about the challenges I've had, and now why I feel I'm ready to tell you why I want to commit to this and become a Buddhist. And I've always said that I do Buddhist meditation, but I'm not a Buddhist. I first went to the breathing space at the London Buddhist Centre about 8 years ago to do a course in the mindfulness-based stress reduction. And I just loved the beauty and stillness of the place and the relevance of what I learned there. So I started to attend courses. I see a pattern here emerging. And go to meditation evenings, and I went on a retreat. I was sick all the way through the retreat, from the minute I got there to the minute I left. And it was genuine food poisoning. It wasn't a reaction to Buddhism. But there was no real consistency. But I did keep coming back time and time again. Then I'd have a break, and then I'd come back. And now I'm not like this in my work and with my trustee commitments or with the commitments to my community. I am with lots of different activities. I'm a dabbler. I'm a real butterfly. I get hugely excited and passionate about things for a short period of time, and then I get distracted when something else grabs my attention. I'm doing ceramics at the moment, and I really love it. But one of the reasons I haven't told a lot of my friends that I'm doing this, because I know they'll think it's, how long will that last, Really, they will. I just got an allotment in October, and they're going, oh yeah, we'll see how long that lasts. But yeah, I had lunch from the allotment today. It's fabulous. But it was you, Vajratara, who told a story about a thirsty person trying to get water to drink from lots of different wells. And because they just went down a little way down into each well, they got nothing and moved on to the next well and the next well and the next. And their thirst wasn't quenched. It was only by going deeper into one well that they finally got to the sweet, clear water that their thirst was quenched. And that struck a real chord with me. That made me realize that to really have my spiritual thirst quenched, I needed to go deeper and stop messing about. I also have some challenges with being still and mindful and just slowing down. I think it has something to do with being brought up in a culture founded on the Protestant work ethic that's so drilled into me. I've got to be doing something useful and productive, and even on holiday, I've got to explore everything and everywhere, and I just can't be still. Just sitting just feels lazy, you know? And when I see people who just sit still, I say, you're lazy, get up and do something, you know? Do something. And I get all judgmental about myself as well. And I have the feeling that I'm wasting my life if I'm not out there savouring everything that the world has to offer. And I do get really, really excited about the world and what it has to offer. So it's hard to slow down. It's not to say I can't get enraptured by the sunset or a misty morning or the first onion grown on my new allotment. But also, as a single parent who worked full-time all my life, I've also had to be very adept at multitasking. I'm always thinking about what I've got to do next, always planning and thinking ahead. So what with one thing and another, a busy, gregarious social butterfly who cannot sit still didn't really fit the image of what I thought a Buddhist might look like, because you're all so calm. But one of the turning points for me was going on the Brixton retreat back in Rivendell back in 2019, followed by another Brixton retreat in 2020. The stillness and the silence in the community brought me closer. But the stars really aligned for me during the pandemic. I'd just started coming to more events and sessions at the Brixton Centre anyway, and I'd created space in my life to start to go deeper. I was reading and meditating and more regularly coming on courses. Ooh. Really, I did time this. It's all the asides. But the pandemic really forced me to slow down, and my meditation practice and study became more regular, and I started to find a real joy in stillness. The online offering was a lifeline, and the work put in by the team to make sure we could all access the teachings was incredible. I was joining the study group back in October and making the regular commitment to that was another real turning point. The reading, the exploration of the Dharma, and the support and friendship of the group of women in the study group, and the guidance and support from Amar Pushpa brought me to a new level of understanding and a new depth of practice. The depth is an exploration in the richness of the Dharma, a personal refuge and a commitment to the Sangha. It has an impact on the way I live my life, the way I deal with the worldly winds and the hungry ghosts, and how I deal with the second arrow and my understanding of the world. It helps me understand myself and to regulate my restless mind. The precepts are timeless and compelling, and I want to reorient my life to the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, as a refuge and pathway to a higher spiritual life. I want to walk the talk in a way that I live my life, particularly cultivating a deeper compassion. I feel that this is the start of a lifelong journey, and becoming a mitra will keep me focused, committed, and on track, and develop a solid Buddhist practice. Thank you.
Great, so I hope you enjoyed that Dharma night talk. So if you did enjoy it, if you're enjoying our videos, I just want to ask you or encourage you to think about making a donation to the Brixton Buddhist Community. We're a UK charity that relies completely on your donations to run everything here. And if this was a class, a meditation class, there'd be a donation bowl that you could just put in £10 at the end of the night to help support the activities. But as you're watching this online, I just want to ask you to think about making an online donation. If you've watched 4 or 5 videos this month, maybe you might want to think about giving £10. So there's a link in the description below where you can go to our website and make a donation. And if you want to keep giving and you don't want to worry about making that donation every month, well, you could just set us up a standing order, a monthly standing order. That would be really, really helpful. I want to suggest something of the region of maybe £10 or £20 a month if you're able to do that. And that would be really, really helpful and help us keep producing videos like this one. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourself.